If you've ever faced one of life's biggest milestones feeling completely alone, this story might speak to you. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories that uncover the quiet power of human connection. Now let's begin. Micah Torres says, never imagined he'd be eating a soggy cheeseburger alone in his rusted-out Subaru parked at the edge of the school's back lot on graduation day. Laughter and applause echoed from the main auditorium, where families embraced beneath gold streamers and oversized class of 2023 banners. From where he sat, the joyful chaos was just blurry silhouettes behind fogged-up windows, like a scene from a movie he wasn't invited to. His graduation robe was balled up on the passenger seat, creased and forgotten. The mortarboard that once sat proudly on his head now drooped off the dashboard. His diploma, unwrapped and slightly damp from his nervous palms, rested in his lap. He hadn't even looked at it. Everyone else had someone: moms, dads, cousins, friends, people with signs, balloons, loud cheers, and phone cameras. It was a symphony of celebration, but not for him. Weeks earlier, Micah had sent out invites, one to a P.O. box in New Mexico where his dad might still be receiving mail, one to his mother's halfway house in Seattle, and a text to his older sister who hadn't replied in nearly 8 months. He didn't expect much, but still, some part of him had hoped. All he got was silence. He had walked the stage when his name was called, shook hands with the assistant superintendent, even mustered a smile for the school photographer. There were a few cheers, probably from the counselors who had helped him push through the hard years. But when he glanced into the crowd, there was no one waving, no one holding up a phone, no one waiting to squeeze him into a hug, so he left. He slipped into the boys' restroom, changed back into his jeans and hoodie, then ducked out the side entrance. He drove until he saw the glow of a burger shack, ordered something cheap, and parked in the shadows behind the gym, just far enough from everyone else's joy. There he sat, chewing in silence, wondering if this was what victory was supposed to feel like. Was this all his work amounted to? A cold burger, a quiet car, and a future that still felt uncertain. The knock on his window made him nearly drop his food. He turned sharply, and there stood Vice Principal Langston, still in full ceremony robes, his maroon sash caught in the late afternoon breeze. The older man wasn't smiling. Wasn't frowning by either, just there, present. Micah hesitated, then rolled down the window. He expected something formal, maybe awkwardly encouraging, but instead Langston simply said, "Got room for one more." Before Micah could answer, the vice principal was already circling the car. In a flurry of motion, Micah grabbed the wrinkled gown from the passenger seat, stuffing it into the back with half-empty energy. Drinks? Old notebooks, and a cracked physics textbook. Sorry, it's a mess, he muttered. Langston eased himself into the seat, his ceremonial robe bunching up around the gear shift. "You should see the janitor's lounge," he deadpanned. Micah let out the faintest laugh, a sound he hadn't realized he still had in him. The car fell into silence. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Micah sat there, burger in hand, unsure what to say. This was Vice Principal Langston, the man known for his monotone announcements and stern hallway stares. They'd only had a handful of real conversations, one about college applications, and another when Langston caught him sleeping in the school library during finals week. The older man stared straight ahead, fog clouding the windshield. "I noticed you slipped out before the reception," he said without turning. Micah shrugged, buying time with another bite of food. Wasn't really in the mood. Langston nodded, quiet for a moment. "I get it." That caught Micah off guard. The vice principal leaned back, gaze distant. "At my graduation, I hid in the maintenance shed behind the football field. Figured no one would look there." Micah blinked. The image didn't match the man beside him, all pressed suit and polished shoes. But suddenly he didn't seem like just a school authority figure. He seemed like someone who understood why. Micah asked softly, curiosity cracking through his guarded voice. He let out a dry, quiet laugh. "My folks were in the middle of a pretty nasty argument that day. Couldn't agree on who I'd be living with after the ceremony. Kind of ruined the whole proud family narrative." He paused, then continued with a resigned tone. "They'd been divorced for years by then, but something about graduation brought out all the bitterness they hadn't dealt with." Micah glanced at him, unsure what to say. He mumbled the only thing that came to mind. "That sucks." Langston gave a small shrug. "It did. But you know what? That day, it wasn't really about them." Micah gave a half laugh, sharp and hollow. "Well, today isn't about anyone for me either. No crowd, no problem, right?" That's when Langston turned to face him fully, not as an authority figure, but simply as a man. His voice was steady. I've seen your academic file, Micah. I know what you've been carrying. Pulling graveyard shifts at Preston's shipping center while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. That doesn't go unnoticed. Micah squirmed slightly, the seat suddenly uncomfortable. He hated when people brought it up. It made everything feel too exposed, like naming it might make it collapse. I'm fine, he muttered. There are kids out there with harder lives. Langston didn't debate him, he just nodded. The kind of nod someone gives when they understand quiet survival firsthand. That may be true, he said, but that doesn't make what you've done any less extraordinary. There was a pause, then Langston added with quiet emphasis, you know, when I saw your name on the final graduate list, I made sure to keep an eye out for you today. Micah turned confused. Why he wasn't a valedictorian? He'd never been in detention. He wasn't loud. Just another name, another face in the crowd. Langston exhaled and looked down at his gloved hands, voice lowering. Because 4 years ago, I got a call from your case counselor at Echo Ridge Middle School. She told me you were at risk of dropping out, said your attendance was a mess and your home life was unstable. She was worried you wouldn't even make it through freshman year. He let the words sit for a moment. Micah didn't speak. He didn't need to because he remembered it all. The moldy apartment, the foster aunt who smoked indoors and forgot dinner, existed the nights on a friend's couch. Then the garage he slept in when things got really bad. Statistically, Langston continued students with your background. They don't usually make it to this day. Micah's jaw clenched. He took a long breath, trying not to let anything shake loose. Then with a shrug that tried too hard to be casual, he muttered, guess spite's a pretty decent motivator. Langston chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. Spite can be effective, he said, but it's not enough what you've done that took grit, that took something rare. They sat in silence again, the breeze whispering through the barely cracked windows. The celebration inside felt like it belonged to another world. Micah had stopped eating. His food sat forgotten in his lap. Langston spoke softly, you know what I think. We get so caught up in noticing who's not there. We forget to see who was. Micah stiffened, his voice edged with defensiveness. No offense, but I've kind of been on my own. Langston turned to him again, not with judgment, but with a question tucked gently into his gaze. Have you? He didn't challenge, he just invited Micah to look again. Ms. Beltran stayed after school every Thursday to help him survive calculus. Vice Principal Langston said, his voice quiet. Coach Rivas made sure he could shower at school when the water at home got cut. The cafeteria staff always packed him extra fruit even when he didn't ask. He paused, then raised an eyebrow. And someone he lingered on the word, let you crash in the art supply closet the week you had nowhere else to sleep. Micah's cheeks flushed hot. He hadn't known anyone else knew about that. Mrs. Hahn, the literature teacher, had given him the spare key and asked him to be out by 6 a.m. before staff started arriving. Langston looked at him gently. You weren't alone, Micah. Not really. You just didn't have the kind of support that ends up on fridge magnets or in photo albums. But people showed up for you in the quiet ways. Micah stared at his hands, his chest tight. All year he'd focused on what was missing. Parents in the stands, family hugs, celebration dinners. But now for the first time he began to see what he'd been given. Instead, rules bent quietly, doors left open. A principal who noticed Langston shifted slightly, then reached into his robe. I have something for you. He handed Micah a plain white envelope. This was supposed to be part of the reception, but, well, here we are. Inside was a folded card. Ink crowded the page, signatures, scribbles, heartfelt messages of Micah. You did it. We're proud of you. Never stop pushing forward. Can't wait to see what you do next. The entire staff had signed it, but what froze him in place was the folded check clipped to the corner. Some of us chipped in, Langston said quietly. We know you've got a partial scholarship. This should cover books. Maybe a transit pass or two. Micah's throat clenched. It's not a huge amount, the vice principal started. It's everything, Micah whispered, voice breaking. He cleared his throat. I didn't expect. Langston held up a hand. You don't have to say anything. Just make sure it counts. He checked his watch and sighed. Reception's about done. I should get back. As he opened the car door, he turned one last time. You know, Micah, we're not only shaped by who doesn't show up for us, we're shaped by who does. And sometimes, he gave a half smile, we have to give people the chance to show up. He stepped out, adjusting his robe as the breeze picked up. Before shutting the door, he leaned in once more. A few of us are heading to Mateo's Cafe in about an hour. Nothing fancy, Sandwiches, bad jokes, a slice of cake with too much frosting. There's a seat with your name on it if you feel like dropping by. Then he was gone, his robes fluttering as he walked toward the auditorium, back into the world of speeches and streamers. Micah sat still, the envelope clutched in his hands, and for the first time all day, the card didn't feel so empty. The diploma on his lap didn't feel like a hollow token. The silence didn't sting. Just a tradition, Langston had said. Nothing formal, just a spot at the table if you want it. Micah watched him disappear through the glass. He sat a long while letting the moment settle. For the first time, he looked out at the families filing past cameras, flashing voices, warm kids with tired eyes and proud hearts, and didn't feel jealousy. Instead, he felt curiosity. How many of those smiles were earned through battles no one else saw? How many people sitting in those pews had climbed their own invisible ladders to get there? Finally, he started the engine. The school looked different now. Not just a building he couldn't wait to leave, but a place that, for better or worse, had quietly held him up. He opened the glove box and placed the card inside, like it was something sacred. He checked the time. The gathering at Mateo's would be starting soon. His stomach twisted. Crowds weren't his thing, but something softer, something unfamiliar pressed through that fear. Maybe hope. He pulled out his phone and entered Mateo's cafe into the GPS. It was only 15 minutes away. He told himself he'd just drive by. Just see. Then before shifting into gear, he reached for his graduation cap in the back seat. He placed it beside him on the passenger seat. A quiet reminder. Today mattered. He mattered. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to celebrate alone. 20 minutes later, he pulled into the cafe parking lot. He almost turned around, but then he saw them. Beltran was laughing as she stepped out of her dusty red sedan, brushing leaves off her navy skirt, while Coach Rivas made some joke that earned a dramatic eye roll. Mrs. Hahn was already at the door, her graduation heels replaced with her signature worn sneakers, the same pair she'd worn every day for 4 years. These weren't just teachers. They were the people who had seen Micah at his lowest. They'd watched him nod off mid-lecture from night shifts that ran too long, had quietly handed him spare lunch vouchers when he came to school in the same hoodie 3 days in a row, had looked into his tired eyes and still expected more, not out of cruelty, but because they believed he had more to give. And now here they were, still showing up, still holding space for him in a world that so often had none. Micah inhaled deeply, reached for his graduation cap, and stepped out of the car. Vice Principal Langston noticed him first. He didn't say much, just gave a subtle nod, acknowledgement, maybe approval, then returned to his conversation like it was perfectly normal for Micah to walk up to a group of teachers at a restaurant after a ceremony he hadn't even planned to attend. But when Ms. Beltran turned and saw him, her whole face lit up. Micah, "You made it," she said, as if his presence alone completed something. Her voice didn't just welcome him, it rooted him. One by one, the others turned to Coach Rivas, Mrs. Hahn, even a few substitute teachers. Micah barely remembered by name and greeted him not with surprise but with quiet joy. Something shifted deep inside, a knot he hadn't even realized he was carrying began to loosen. The ache of absence was replaced with something warmer, something that felt a lot like home. No, this wasn't the graduation day you'd see on a greeting card. There were no tearful parents, no perfectly framed photos, no handshakes with distant relatives and thick envelopes passed discreetly across dinner tables. But as he stepped through the doors of Mateo's cafe, surrounded by people who had believed in him long before he believed in himself, Micah realized something stronger than tradition. He had found his chosen family, the kind who stayed behind after hours, the kind who looked past his worn-out hoodie and saw a future worth investing in, the kind who knocked on car windows when the world felt too quiet. Sometimes life doesn't give us the celebration we thought we earned. Sometimes we eat cold food alone while joy happens behind glass. But sometimes someone knocks and that changes everything. If this story touched you, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories about resilience, quiet victories, and the people who show up in unexpected ways. And just maybe today's the day you knock on someone's window, or let someone knock on yours.